now I'm recording, so be better.
No one's saying dumb.
Can only all look smart. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about Workiva's InfoSec program. But first, we're going to do a little introduction to Jeff and myself. Jeff, you get to go
first, but you put me first.
Yep.
Your mistake.
Yep.
So a little bit about who I am. So when I was writing this, also Ellen did this presentation last year, and I was trying to kind of take my inspiration from her slides and just do this generalist, like, all right, how do I summarize myself in a sentence? And I feel like, especially lately, something that stands out about me is I've identified myself as kind of a chronic game collector. It's acknowledging the problem is the first step to healing. So this is me acknowledging my problem, and I like to try different things. I don't know that I'm especially great at any particular thing, but I like to try to explore lots of different stuff. Ellen, you're driving the slides, I think.
Yes, I can just leave you here forever and make you keep talking, but I'll click
Sounds
next.
Great. I won't be awkward at all. So on the game side, so that's my Kickstarter. On the previous slide, about up 120 projects back in the last 5 years. Most of them games. Some of them kind of trickling in. You can see on the pictures there on the right, starting to stack up in shelves. My board game shelves are starting to resemble my Steam library, which I imagine some of you guys can relate to, or you just kind of look through and you're like, yep, I haven't played that, I haven't played that, I haven't played that, I don't even think I want to play that, where did I get this? So yeah, chronic game collector. On the beyond the borders of my house, I like to get out and do things, do hiking. I've got a cattle dog that we're starting to introduce into some of these outdoor adventures. I like to build things. Again, not especially proficient at anything. I certainly wouldn't consider myself a professional or necessarily even an amateur, but a couple projects there on the side, on the left side. Professionally, I started off as in 2005, I went to St. Ambrose University in Davenport, Iowa, and I was planning on studying political science and becoming a practicing attorney, going to law school afterwards. I did mock trial when I was in high school, and I had a lot of fun with that. I did it when I was a freshman as well, and kind of learned that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. So I started looking into this computer thing. I went to a local community college, did some basic stuff, and eventually went to Iowa State, where I got my undergraduate in computer engineering, participated in the Information Assurance Student Group, CDCs, which I think I may be talking about later, so I may have undercut myself. Ultimately got my master's in Information Assurance and Computer Engineering through the CyberPro program. Next slide. Yeah, so that thing that I said that I was going to talk about. So IASG, Ice Age, I worked with Doug, intern there over summer, and then became kind of an ongoing part-timer. Oh, this will be fun. I like all notifications. Participated in CDCs during my undergraduate. Once I was working at Ice Age, I've done everything. I've blue team, red team, white team, green team, the CDCs at ISU. Ellen and I actually participated. We went to grad school together for a year. Participated in CDC, and I think aside from the skill, so there was a lot of skills that I developed that I didn't find were really being driven in some of the classes, or those that were, I found to be reinforced through some of those activities. But I think most importantly, what I got were connections to peers in the industry. The positions that I hold now and prior to this have all been as a result of people that I met through my time in those programs and during my master's program. So the networking aspects of some of these is really important. So after I graduated with my master's degree, I went to work for the MITRE Corporation, which is basically a government contractor. And I started off as a cybersecurity intern. One of my classmates had landed an internship and got my resume in the door with some programming group. We ended up deciding mutually that wasn't going to be a good fit. They forwarded my resume to a couple other groups, and I had a couple promising interviews and selected one of those to move forward with. And ultimately, as you see on the next slide, that's me deep sea fishing. Did that on our internship, which was kind of fun. Went full time there. I ended up leaving about 2.5 years later as a senior cybersecurity engineer. I was working mostly in our security operations center, doing malware analysis and intelligence gathering, and left to come back to Iowa. Native Iowan, obviously, all the schools that I went to were in Iowa. I grew up eastern Iowa along the Mississippi, basically right on 30. And so, yeah, I think that's the last slide about me. So now, Ellen.
Cool. So I apparently put transitions in here and forgot, so you're welcome. So I consider myself a professional curator of random hobbies and experience. Pretty much if there's like, oh man, there's this task that can be done super fast with machines. I'm like, what if you took it and did it by hand instead and took like 12 times as long and was super complicated and way over involved? That's me. So to that, I got this dog who's laying next to the caution wet floor sign, and she was a crazy banana terrier. Any of you who've had terriers, they're kind of crazy and insane and completely off the wall bananas. And so I started looking into like, how do you train dogs and that type of stuff? And instead of just doing the normal route of like, I taught my dog how to sit and that was the end of that, I was like, what if I became a dog trainer? And so I took an online course with like an in-person mentorship thing and became a certified professional dog trainer. And then I was like, what if I could teach other people how to train dogs? And so I started a nonprofit called Underdogs Triumph, which provides low-cost dog training. And then we use that funds to work with like communities and libraries and shelters and stuff to sort of spread positive training around. So you always take it a little bit and then you go a lot of bit. That's how life rolls. So who am I personally? We have alpacas because that was another thing. I really like to knit. And I was like, what if we started with the animal and went all the way to knitting instead of just buying yarn at like a hobby store like a normal person? So we have 4 lady alpacas who are awesome and amazing. This is a bit of honey here. This is my crazy terrier, Esther. That's my dog, Luna, and our cat, Selena, and our 2 cats, Cass and Anara, and then our bunch of chickens, who look way less beautiful here because they're all molting, so they kind of look like feathers exploded everywhere. But they provide us with fresh eggs every morning, and that's pretty cool. I also collect random hobbies like Jeff does. I have a 3D printer and print random things and then paint them. I also make stuffed alpacas and a whole bunch of other knitting, crocheting related things, like blankets. I too got to do a whole bunch of Kickstarter random backing, and Jeff and I fuel our problems with Kickstarters by sharing games that the other one should buy. And then instead of just like having one copy that we both play with together, it's like, what if we had 2 copies? So that's that. And then I like painting all the miniatures from that as well. We do a whole bunch of farming stuff related to alpacas and chickens. So we have a little mini tractor. And then we both play D&D as well. So instead of just, drawing it on a piece of paper, I was like, what if we handmade tiles? And so went on a huge rant about that. And now we 3D print tiles as well. So professionally, I too am an Iowa native. I went to Buena Vista University. for computer science and criminology, and I was 100% sure that I was going to go government and just never look back. So to that end, I went onto my master's at Iowa State. I joined a lot of the groups Jeff did as well, and went into the CyberCore program through ISU. If you don't know, the CyberCore program is a government grant program. I'm not sure how to say it, but it's a program. You can apply to it, you get accepted, you get to have your master's degree funded for, provided you do 2 years of government work afterwards. So that's one of the reasons Jeff went to MITRE afterwards. I went, where did, oh boy, we went the wrong way. Back up. Okay, we're good, we're fine. So how did I get to Workiva? So one of my first internships I ever did, I'm a huge pusher for doing all the internships you can possibly get. It is the best way to try a job and have an immediately escape route 3 months later with no questions asked. Like, it is perfectly expected that you try a job, and it's like, oh, I did a summer internship, and you try it out and it was terrible. You can just nope right out of that, and it still looks great on your resume. Whereas, like, once you've graduated, it becomes a lot harder to justify you changing positions every like 4 months because you got bored with the job. But as internships, totally legit. You can totally do that. No one has any problems with it. So first internship I ever got was at a software company that made chiropractic software, and it was the world's worst experience I've ever had. It was all about like, I was hired as like a programmer, and I was going to work on their website, and I was super excited. And instead, they basically wanted me to read chiropractic articles, rewrite them slightly so they could publish them under their chiropractor doctor's name. And I was like, wow, this is like super plagiary and terrible. And they're like, yeah. And then like they had this like, their website was being built by like the CEO's son. And he like came to work in his pajamas and worked on the website. And it was very much like, nope, this is 100 software companies, not where I want to go to. It's like chiropractic software companies. So I was still on the government train. So my next internship was with Interpol, which is the International Criminal Police Organization. And that was out in DC. And that was a super cool experience. Interpol, unlike anything you see on TV, is none of that. So they don't have like super cool agents that drop from ceilings. They don't all wear suits. Basically, it's comprised of agents on loan from other agencies, which was a really cool experience as an intern because I want to know more about the FBI. I can just go down the office, like walk down the office until I find one of the agents at Interpol on loan from the FBI and be like, yo, what do you do with the FBI? What types of jobs do you have? That type of stuff. And so it was a really good networking opportunity there. And similar to what Jeff said, like it is all about networking. In addition to skills, like you have to get past the computer bots that scan everybody's resumes looking for XYZ words. And the easiest way to do that is to know someone who works there, or to know to know more about the organization to get your foot in that door. So it was through Interpol that I got in contact with a family who worked at the NSA. So I went to do an internship there during grad school. And I went to Department of Defense. I worked in the National Threat Organization Center. And if you know nothing about governments, everything has an acronym. You have the DoD, the NSA, the NTOC, and I worked as a software engineer. And my main project was they were looking at network traffic. And the problem was they had a zillion tools that output traffic in a whole bunch of different formats. And they were trying to use it in this cool visualization node graph software. And the problem is everyone labels IP a billion different ways, and you have to go through and like manually change all the stuff before you can load your CSV into this cool program to visualize it. And so we built a little Java tool to translate between crazy output tool file into whatever the software needed. And it allowed analysts, they went from having like, it used to have to be like all hand coded out, and we built like essentially like a wizard that the analysts would go through. like, what's your first field? And they'd type it in. What's your second field? And then it would generate all the code needed to translate it into the format. So that was really cool. The nice thing, much like a Workiva internship, is you're just like a full-time employee. So you get all of the perks of being a full-time employee. You get to walk around and talk to everybody. And we had a top secret clearance as well, which is pretty sweet. Downside is you can't tell anyone about all the cool stuff that you do there. And instead, you get to go home and tell your mom every night, what'd you do at work? I coded. And it's super lame, even though you know it's super cool. But I ended up through there, I found a full-time position. I moved over to the IAD, which is the Information Assurance Directorate. It's kind of like the blue side of defense. And I worked as this crazy title, which reflects none of what I did. I was a global network exploitation and vulnerability analyst. And really, I worked in the forensics department, and I worked on memory and hard disk forensics. We would go on site to customers of government agency XYZ and help them with whatever issue they were having on hard disks or memory analysis for a whole bunch of cool stuff. So it was really great. And the big thing with them is that I learned about Splunk, which is the core thing that I work on now. I got to work in the executive offices of the president for a while on one of our caseloads, which was pretty cool. One of my passions is talking to people and making them listen to me. So I became the lead forensic instructor at the Advanced Cyber Defense course, ACDC. Then the guy who made the program was like hard into ACDC. So literally every acronym we had for the program was some reference to some song by them or some band reference or heavy metal, something or other. And we all just went along with it. Then I became the lead subject matter expert for disk and memory forensics. Like Jeff, I tend to just collect all the things. And sometimes when people point to you and are like, you are now the expert, it feels really terrifying because you're like, oh man, am I? I'm like, that's who you're going with. But as InfoSec as a whole, like you need to quickly assimilate stuff and be able to give people answers when they need it. So that was one of my big skills there, was assimilating all of the disk and memory forensic tools and functions and all that stuff. And then I thought it would be fun to do a Splunk Intel community conference. And so we had 9 different agencies all come to the NSA to do the Splunk conference and royally screwed up the transit system for all of the agency. And it was super great because I neglected to tell someone somewhere that 250 plus people would be arriving for this conference that I thought no one would attend to. And then they all tried to hop on the like 12-person bus to get into agency. And it was really terrible, but it was really awesome. And we got a ton of collaboration across many different government agencies on how people use Splunk. So basically I started at the NSA and then I was like, what if I came to Workiva in Iowa? So what the heck is Workiva? That's where we're up to now. So basically Workiva made a product called Wdesk and a number of other tools as well related to that. But the one we're most popular for is Wdesk as a whole. And you can kind of think of it like Google, but with more advanced businessy analytics. So it connects things together across spreadsheets and PowerPoint and Word docs so that if I'm updating our finances for my company inside an Excel doc, I can link all of the numbers in there to a spreadsheet that I would then give to present at like the board meeting or something that would have all of the numbers all pulled over. I don't have to update them in 2 different places. So that's one of our core things, is moving data around super efficiently and linking things together so you don't have to update things more than once. So to that end, we have 32,000 plus customers, a gazillion documents, and a whole bunch more linked elements. And that's across our slides, documents, sheets, and data products. And we have a number of other components within all of those, but that's kind of the gist of that. We have a large customer base of a lot of big companies. So many of the Fortune 500 companies, I think that's now up to 85%. I'm not 100% sure on that. But most Fortune 500 companies use our software, and we have a very high customer satisfaction rating. and are worldwide too. We have offices all across the world, even though we founded in Ames, Iowa. So here are some of them. We don't have all of them because we stole this infographic from HR and it hasn't been updated. And so that's where that's at. But yeah, so in addition to Ames as our central location, so we still have, I think there's 600 plus employees there. But we're up to 1,200 and some employees worldwide, and we have a bunch more Asian offices that are opening as we spread into their marketplace, and some European ones as well. So teams in general, almost all of these teams have interns in some capacity. When you're doing job hunting, as I'm sure most of you are aware, everyone likes to call their thing, it's, computer science, it's computer super science, it's, they have a ton of different names for all the things. But we have, at the end, we'll show you the link to our career page, which has all of the full-time and internship opportunities on there for you. We also have a diverse workplace. It's something that we're very passionate about improving and expanding on. So these are some of our employee resource groups. It's essentially just a community that works towards funding that goal. So I'm in the Women in Tech group, and we talk about getting more awesome ladies into tech. And there's a whole bunch of other groups as well related to those things. We also have an award-winning company. We're in the Fortune, I think it's Fortune 100 best companies to work for various different things. Number 12 in technology is pretty awesome for a large company. Millennials is pretty cool. And just in general, some of our local offices like New York and Chicago. And then we're 58 in the 100 best companies to work for overall. So those are pretty good things that we're proud of. We do a lot of, when we aren't in like COVID world of strangeness, we do a lot of community outreach and fun programs in the office that get people interacting together. So InfoSec at Workiva. We got to figure out what InfoSec professionals actually do. And if the beginning of this meeting is any indicator, that's kind of what we do. Be kind of crazy and have a whole bunch of passions about things. So we're going to ask the internet first, because that's where you go to solve all of your problems. So these were two good photos we thought summarized what InfoSec professionals do. We have a phrase at work that we call drinking from the fire hose, which is a common one that you use. It's basically dev comes to you and says, hey, I'm learning this cool language called, Square Calculator, and I want to rewrite this whole new thing in it. Can I do that? And you're like, Google, what the heck is that thing? What does the language look like? Yes or no. So it's all about assimilating new information quickly so that you can provide accurate information to folks. So then I was like, that's kind of silly. Let's ask my team. And this is one of my favorite GIFs of all times. And it just gets better the longer you watch it. So you can all just appreciate the gloriousness. The man is holding a burning loaf of bread. There's a lady riding an ostrich.
It's even more glorious when you explain all of the glorious things.
You're welcome. I can keep going. I can do this all day. Man crawling on there, drinking coffee. A lady that says Gina rules with her flag. Tina, sorry. But it's glorious. So after all of that, why would you want this job? So one of the reasons I think Jeff and I both like InfoSec work is it's highly rewarding, is that you have a lot of people that come to you that need help with something, and you get to provide that, as well as opportunities for educating them and keeping your company secure. To that end, every day is different. We have a daily stand-up in the morning where we talk about all the things we hope to accomplish, and those things frequently change many times throughout the day as new things come up. Perhaps some new incident happens or some new bug comes up in our software that we didn't know about before. And so if you don't like boring, repetitive things, this is a great job for you. It makes it always interesting. And there's always that chance and opportunity to learn new things and to become an expert in something on your team, because no one is an expert and they need an expert. So there's always opportunities for that. So what makes a good InfoSec professional? Patience is the number one thing, something I think we're all sometimes short of, but it is a good thing to have. We, as a Workiva InfoSec team, we try really hard not to say no to people, because and to not yell at them when they do stupid things, which is another big one, because we want them to come and tell us like, hey, I clicked on something that's definitely phishing and I entered in all of this stuff. Now what do I do? And not be like, I don't want to go to InfoSec. They're just going to yell at me and tell me I'm dumb. And it's like, well, that may be true. We do want to still provide that opportunity and option for them to come to us first, so we can find out of things before they become major things. Adaptability and being comfortable with the unfamiliar. That's another big trait in being okay with not knowing things and being able to try to figure things out, and being able to go with the flow when you're asked to do something that you've never done before. And then there's some basic security things like being able to protect sensitive and restrictive info and not go around telling all your friends about what you did at work. That type of thing comes into play. And then being able to prioritize events. So when you have like 8 things up in the air, you need to be able to know which one of those things is the most important to fix first, and being able to delegate out those other tasks if you need to, if those are also important. Were you going to talk about this one, Jeff? I don't remember.
So I will tack on. So one of the underlying things on the last slide that I meant to add on is communication. You'll find yourself working a lot with people on the team, with people off the team, technical people, non-technical people, and we interact with a large portion of the company on a wide variety of things. So being able to communicate in those various forms, written and verbal, are also is a very important skill set. So yeah, overall, so we've kind of discussing kind of the future of our team and building out the structure of it. And we've identified these 4 pillars that comprise the team: risk and compliance, security operations, security engineering, and security architecture. And so we'll talk about each of these in a little bit more detail, but just at a really high level, risk and compliance they're kind of our auditors.
Oh my gosh.
What is happening?
I'm trying to move a window to another window and it's being dumb. Sorry, carry on. You're doing great. We're good at this. There you go.
Our security operations team, which is led by Ellen, is our logging infrastructure, our incident response and alerting handling procedures, and all of the things that feed into those processes. Security engineering is the team that I lead. We're responsible for monitoring and scanning basically our security posture of our code infrastructure, the people that work at Workiva, and providing paths forward for fixing those things when problems arise. And then our security architecture team is our newest kind of group that we've spun up, and they're responsible for performing research on. So Ellen mentioned that kind of rate of constantly things coming in and needing experts. And so this team is kind of our solution to that, is like, oh, let's create a team who's responsible for being an expert and staying on top of all that stuff and advising. And so that's our security architecture group. And now we'll talk more about those things again.
It's all good. So risk and compliance, we deal a lot with pre-released financials from other companies. And so it's really important that we prove not only to our own customers, but our own external auditors, as well as when customers audit us, that we protect things to a level and standard that they are expecting us to protect things. And it also sort of acts as like a badge of honor to be able to present that we meet these certain standards. One of the big ones is FedRAMP, which allows us to sell to federal customers. And it was a huge undertaking, which is a huge effort across Workiva to be able to checkbox all the requirements to meet what they had to get that achievement. And it was a really good effort across the company. Again, slide transitions. You're welcome. So security operations team, like Jeff said, is led by me. We basically take in all of the logs across Workiva. So anything that's textual that comes out of our systems or various components like our ticket managing system like Jira or anything like that. And it's all about recording the who, what, where, when log types so that we can create alerts to notify us when something happens. We can create reports that get emailed out to people to summarize a series of events that happened or summarize when something occurs. And then dashboards, which are dynamic ways to view that data in fun charts and graphs and stuff like that.
Yeah, back to me. So security engineering. So we're pretty tightly coupled with our R&D and risk and compliance teams in particular, as those are the groups that we're kind of feeding information to our risk and compliance team, helping them verify a lot of the things that they need verified for our external requirements. And then R&D is both our customer as well as kind of the person stuck at the end of the whip oftentimes. So we can kind of summarize our focus on 3 general areas, which is code, our infrastructure, and our personnel. And so the way that we kind of evaluate those things is we have coding that we perform to automate and improve processes for evaluating those things. We're constantly doing scannings of our code, our infrastructure to evaluate whether they meet our audit requirements. We have training programs for our developers and anyone at the company or everyone at the company. We have phishing trainings, and those come in both the form of just like presentations as well as monthly phishing assessments. And we really focus on those from the perspective of training. And then remediation. So how are we solving the problems that we're identifying through our coding and scanning? And then on that security architecture side, so I mentioned the constantly new things that developers are bringing forth that they want to use. Well, that's enabled by kind of the nature of cloud. Just last year at reInvent, AWS announced 75 new products and or major features to existing products. And so we need to be able to quickly respond and absorb that information, determine what are the risks to using those. Are they going to satisfy our audit requirements and things like that? And so our security architecture is working with R&D in order to figure out what is the safe way to adopt new features that are being released by our cloud providers.
Okay, so to that end, we have 2 internships that will come available this summer. One is for my team and one is for Jeff's team. So security operations internship. So what is that? Basically, you would be primarily using Splunk, which takes all I mentioned, like all the log data, all the text data, and then allows you to generate those reports, graphs, visualizations, dashboards, that type of stuff. It's basically our centralized tool for asking questions and get answers. You do both things from the security side of things, monitoring our own infrastructure for security related things, but we also provide assistance to other users at our company because everyone across Workiva uses Splunk in some manner for the most part. Our HR department does, our cafe team does, a bunch of our R&D folks do, and so we provide general support to those folks as well. So when I first started at Workiva in 2015, we had a single Splunk node. We had an InfoSec team of about 5 people, and we ingested about 50 gigs of data per day. And the user experience was pretty much like this. The little sad Splunk node was taking in way too much data. It would fall over, explode, all those fun technical super trademark terms, and pretty much unusable by a lot of the team. And so we went through various iterations to expand that out. And now in 2020, we have a clustered environment. We have 3 search heads, which allow users to interact with the data that's stored there, 12 indexers, and we use smart store back storage, which is pretty cool. It takes, instead of using disks on the actual boxes, we use S3 storage in Amazon AWS. So it's kind of a cool, cheap way to do storage that way. It's used company-wide now. We have about 450 active users in Splunk, and we take in 2 terabytes of data per day, which is significantly more than 50 gigs when we started out with. So just some examples of how people use Splunk here at Workiva.
I like to imagine that is the example of how people use Splunk.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Okay. So this was a code release dashboard that we used to monitor when we had put out a new Lambda function to ingest data at Workiva, and so we were monitoring the transition between the old version and the new version. And it's nice because you can see when it crosses over into the new version. So using visualizations to look at data makes your human brain really happy, even if your computer can do things really cool with data, but you got to make the human component work well as well. So this was some things too around our Lambda functioning. We can monitor max processing time, looking at average processing time, especially when you're doing like version transitions to see if, well, now it takes 4 times as much time as before. You can monitor for those types of things to know how your new version of code is working. For onboarding and HR, these are some of the things they use to track employees from when they're first made an offer, to where they end up, where they were hired from, and make reports like this to show where all of our employees come in at. So what types of things would you do as a security operations intern? Did I not do something there? I don't know. Slides, they're weird. Stop going to the next one.
Blank on.
It's just blank. So cool. So some things you do, I mentioned some of them before. So we have a large number of alerts that we consider critical. And so we help respond to those. We have like an on-call program that we help with during the day to respond to any of those tickets that go off. They can be for all sorts of random things. You will become super familiar with the Splunk software. It has its own language. It's similar to SQL, but I think a lot better in some instances. And there's a few cases where it's a lot worse. But overall, I think it's pretty good. Our current intern has done some cool dashboarding to look at our audit trail across all of Workiva. So he made a cool set of interlinked dashboards. So like I would like to look at all of the email audit logs, and there's a sweet dashboard that breaks it down into common questions like who do they send emails to, who do they get emails to, those types of categories. And he did it for all the different various places we get audit logs for. So you'd likely assist with projects like that. We're currently setting up enterprise security, which is like Splunk, except like hyper security focused. And so it has a lot of cool things like incident management, layouts, and tools. And we have only started looking into that about like a month ago or so, 3 weeks ago. So it's super new to us and super new. And our current intern, Tyler, is having a lot of fun learning that process and learning how to implement new things into a functioning workflow through that. So those are some of the projects. If you apply to the internship, we can go through and discuss more of those types of things you might work on, what a day-to-day job would look like, that type of thing.
Yeah, so on the security engineering internship side, first a couple of edits to what Ellen said. We've got 2 spots that we're opening up for January. So if you're interested in those, as Ellen mentioned earlier, they're on I hope they're on the careers page, along with a long list of other internships. If you have no interest in anything that we've said, feel free. You're still encouraged to check out any of those other slots. But kind of diving in a little bit more to what I was talking about, or the high level that I gave earlier. On the coding side, so Ellen, one of the things she mentioned was just like developers coming to us with like new languages, Workiva has several languages that they use. Some of them newer, like Dart and Golang. Some of them a little bit more obscure, such as Kotlin. And of course, we have your standard Python and Java languages as well. So we have a long list of languages that we're having to be familiar with and figure out how do we evaluate. We have hundreds of changes that are being made to our code base every day. So we use GitHub as our source code repository, and we've got thousands. I think we're pushing to like 2,000 repositories or something like that, with some hundreds of them as our repositories that hold our actual production code. And between those, there's tens of thousands of external dependencies that we have to stay on top of. So, what are the licensing issues? What are the vulnerabilities in those? How out of date are they? And we have millions of lines of internal code that we're responsible for ensuring the security of. So we're having to do the vulnerability and CVE monitoring. So CVE comes from government. You can guess because it's an acronym. Stands for Common Vulnerability, and I always want to say enumeration, and I feel like that's always wrong.
Exposures.
Dang it! Thanks, Lormore. I'm so glad you're here. But yeah, so common vulnerability exposures, as well as we have some scanning that do CWEs, which is common. I think that one's common weakness. Enumeration, is that one enumeration? We're just going to move on. I mentioned the license monitoring already. We also do manual pen testing to find vulnerabilities in our code. Next slide, please. On our infrastructure side, so a lot of our infrastructure is managed as code. So if you're familiar with AWS, Amazon Web Services at all, they have something called CloudFormation, which is basically a JSON file that you can define all of the components that you're going to deploy. And so but there's still some unique challenges that come with operating in the cloud. So we offer, so in order to support the number of customers that we have, we need to be able to have them operate in our platform at the same time. But of course, they're not operating all at the same time, and they're not all always operating. So this concept of scaling up and scaling down. So we have infrastructure that is appearing and disappearing. So how do you scan for those types of things? All of our deployment tools, our CI system, our release pipelines, everything that deploys out, that actually runs the CloudFormation, like takes the CloudFormation and pushes it out to AWS. All of that is developed in at Workiva. So we have all custom integration points that we're having to look at, and both in terms of, are these things being done securely? How are they managing secrets? And looking at how do we get insights into our infrastructure through these custom tools. And then, as I was mentioned in that the security architecture slide, there's just constantly new features and services that are being deployed. And so it's a rapidly evolving environment. And in addition to our architecture team needing to provide guidance to our R&D teams for how do they use those things securely, we also have to figure out how do we audit those things to make sure that they're being deployed securely. And then we have multiple AWS accounts where services are run, which mostly kind of just expands on that the auto scaling problems. There's more places where you have to look for things, and people are doing different things in different accounts. So our solution to these problems, as much as possible, is automation. We hate doing things manually, except for probably pen tests, because I mean that's just fun. So we're doing custom checks on every code change. Our team developed a in-house suite of tools that we run that we use to evaluate changes to GitHub for security impacting changes, verifying that they're using the secure configurations and baselines that we kind of defined as policy. That we've recently expanded on that, building out a script execution system that we use for collecting our cloud asset inventory, and we're pulling our code down via that system and feeding it to external scanning tools. And we have about a half of a dozen tools and scanners that are being executed through this script execution system on varying intervals, some of them daily, some of them weekly, monthly. Just kind of depends on, what are we looking for from those systems. Next slide.
Oh,
whoa, that was transitioned. That was an old Ellen slide. I didn't do any of the fancy transitions. So that's Tweak, our mascot. I'm not sure how many other transitions that we were going to secretly have in these.
Nope.
So continuing our solution for how are we addressing our problems in code. So obviously not everything can be done through automation. There's some things that people just have to do because we haven't taught the robots how to do them yet. So we're doing code reviews, and we're obviously focusing on those from a security perspective. Penetration testing, because as much as I wish there was a good scanning tool that could tell you if you've got vulnerabilities in your application, there just isn't, no matter what a customer or a vendor is trying to sell you. We have to do we've got our vulnerability triage. So we have a bug bounty program that we use. We have select people that are able to go into a dedicated instance of our platform, look for problems, and they report those to us. And then, of course, we have the information that comes out of our various scanners, and we have to identify what of these things are actual problems, what sort of timelines we need to fix those under. And a lot of times we're working very closely with the teams to coordinate those fixes, and sometimes going so far as to advise them specifically what needs to change, or offering the PR up ourselves. The fastest way that we can get a vulnerability fix out the door, in some cases, obviously it's in a lot of cases we don't have the capacity or the familiarity to do this, but is writing it ourselves and giving it to a team. They are much happier to receive a pull request that they can just go look at, run some tests on, and say, thanks, looks good, ship it, than us sending them a ticket and be like, please do the thing, and then tell us when you did it, and we'll test it, and that's all a lot more boring. Next slide. And on our personnel side, so I could touch on this a bit already. So we've got our developers, our customer support people that are directly interacting with customers. So Ellen talked a little bit about kind of what our company does, and generalizes like is similar to a Google Docs platform, but much more business focused. Well, so the customers that we have that are using us, oftentimes their business case is for like financial reporting or like various government reporting, and so it's very sensitive documents that are important that they not be leaked. And our customer support team is helping them to use the platform, and is sometimes accessing those, and a lot of times they have access to the customer's accounts and have access to those documents. We have our finance team, which of course is responsible for making sure that we all get paid, all of our vendors get paid, and just dealing with all of the numbers that flow in and out of the company. And our human resources team that deals with a lot of private information of our employees, social security numbers. We start looking at like our European offices, they've got GDPR. You've seen all of you go to a website and they're like, do you accept cookies? Well, that's all because GDPR, right? They have to get your explicit consent to do the tracking. So we have all this information that we have access to, and we have to figure out how do we make sure that everybody is interacting with all the things safely, and that they're not giving anybody access to things that they shouldn't be. And yeah, that picture I think really summarized it for those of you that just tuned me out and stared at that amazing picture for a while. So Oh, we're back. I was like, why does it say the same thing on the bullets?
I was letting everyone see the cool picture. We worked hard at these pictures, Jeff. Maybe not so much the words, but definitely the pictures.
Yeah. So our solution on the personnel side is training, and I say other learning opportunities, because our phishing assessments, we focus on those being education, not evaluation. There's the kind of a mixed bag sometimes. They're received better than they are by others. But we have our security awareness trainings that we put together for everyone in the company, as well as providing specific trainings for our developers for how to securely code and how to identify security issues in their teammates' codes. Next slide. I talk good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what are you going to do as a security engineer? So we've got a few projects around our phishing assessments and all the tracking and the platform that we use to distribute those, as well as opportunities to participate in the assessments themselves and putting those together, which creates a great opportunity to interface with the rest of the company. We've got our tool development, so we do a lot of stuff around automation and that inventory collection and execution of all those other tools, and that all works through the code platform that we've put together and that we maintain. And there's lots of opportunities for coding on our team. We've got the vulnerability triage. So whether you want to, and with that, of course, the pen testing. So finding vulnerabilities in code and evaluating vulnerabilities that others have found in code and working with our development team to resolve those, as well as security event triage. So we work with our security operations team and supporting them through evaluation of security events. And so there's opportunities there for helping to identify security events as well as triage ones that come in.
Cool. So here's the final page before we open it up to questions if folks have them. So basically, workiva.com/careers has both all of our internship and full-time openings available. So we have some in other departments too. If security isn't necessarily your thing, we have some R&D internships and some others across in many of those other departments that we talked about. But I'll leave this up, and then our next slide just says questions. So we can open it now if folks have individual questions on here.
So if I remember from the start of the slides, you guys were both working when you were in college with the cyber. It was like the Cyberforce initiative or the
Cybercore program.
Cybercore. How does one get into that, and like how late in your career can you, or your college career, can you get into that? Because like I think that might be something I'd be interested in, but I'm already a senior.
Yep. So I don't know if this has changed, but it was Iowa State used it exclusively for their master's program. I know other universities have PhD programs that are built on it, and I assume Doug Jacobson is still the person who manages that program, so he'd be the best contact for it. But yeah, it's a program for paying for the master's program.
Yeah, and I spoke to Doug in January, and he unfortunately said ISU is no longer a part of the CyberCorps program. That could have changed since then, but I tried to actually get into that, but he said ISU doesn't do it anymore. But yeah, it's at other universities as well.
All right. Cool.
Yeah, and I think at least when we went through it, like you could apply, like you go to cybercore.com and apply through there as well. So that might be something you could investigate to see if that's still a possibility or not.
Or if that's something that you want to do and you're open to the university in which you pursue that program, you can probably find more information for universities that are running that program there.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What does the recruiting process look like for these internships for next fall? Or are they for the summer or fall? Can't remember.
So mine is for the summer, and I misspoke. And Jeff's he has 2 open, and they're both for January starting.
Okay.
Yep. And there was more to that question. I forgot what it was though.
The recruiting timeline.
So I mean, when we're starting now at this point, starting to talk to people, obviously targeting January, we'll be at both representatives of both the operations team as well as the engineering team will be at the ISU job fair here next week, later this week.
No, it's like the 15th.
Yeah, I don't
Next
know.
week.
COVID,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. What year is it? Oh wait, I know that one. Yeah. So in terms of like our interview process is like you have to initially start by applying at this workiva.com/careers. That is the only way HR will ever let you get any further in that pipeline is to apply on there. So that's always the first step. And then typically HR will reach out to you and do like a in-person, what are you looking for? Are you a good fit for Workiva? And then we'll do a few interviews with like if you apply for the operations side, you'll interview with our team. And then we proceed from there in a typical interview job position type thing.
Sweet.
What happened to you guys as interns for this last summer?
I mean, they're all here. I mean, they ended when school started. We didn't like, shoot them out of a cannon or off a cliff or anything.
We
but
ate
yes,
them.
No.
for cannibal.
No.
But they did work over the summer.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, we had it was
Oh, I see.
Yeah. He's caught up now. Anyway, but yeah, so yeah, we had interns for the summer. It was, of course, everyone's first time doing the remote thing. Both as full-time employees and interns, but I think it worked pretty well. We have my intern currently who's staying on for the rest of the school year. He is from BVU as well, and so they do you can extend your internship most of the time, sometimes if that's offered to you, and then he works part-time during the school year.
Yep. So yeah, my team's intern was we hired him back in summer 2018. He stayed on through the school year. He's an ISU student, and then continued on through just this past summer. So I guess that would have been 2019 we hired him, because 2 summers. I'm good at math. And so he finished up school here at the end of the summer this year. So he's graduating.
Like we try to treat these as long-term things as much as possible, right? Like, I mean, the end goal for us is always hire to a full-time position if possible, but everything's subject to funding and recs and all that stuff.
Yeah. So he hasn't left yet, but we're working that all avenues at this point.
Yep. But yes, it's always easy to take after you've been on with us for an intern. It is much easier to convert an intern into a full-time person because you don't have to do all the startup thing again. So that's definitely if we can make all the finances, recs, and HR happy, that's definitely the preferred route that we like going, because it's far easier because you already know the person. You don't have to hire a full-time person blank. So again, it goes back to kind of that. It's who you know, like you get your foot in the door through an internship and then discuss possibilities of converting it to a full-time.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to hit the stop record button then.